पाकिस्तान और भारत है, क्या उनके दरमियान कोई engagement expect की जा सकती है? And how does the world look at the conflict between Pakistan and India? Where do Pakistan and India stand vis-a-vis international support? What role can the US president play in bringing the two countries together at the negotiating table and resolving the long-standing issues जो कि एक वजह बनती है हमेशा किसी भी conflict की? And are there any solutions to an enduring peace between Pakistan and India? Joining us now, Michael Kugelman, one of the leading analysts on South Asia. Greetings, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you. Great to be back with you.
Thank you. Michael, no signs of Pakistan-India talks as yet, despite the lapse of 9 days. And as we speak, before I go on to ask what do you foresee in the post-ceasefire scenario, who do you think won the war? As Pakistanis, we know that we have beaten our adversary with a 6-0 score, and the ceasefire, which we're celebrating as of now, is a tactical victory for us. But since you're not a Pakistani nor an Indian, as an independent analyst sitting outside, what's your take? Who won the war?
Yeah, so I think that there are two different wars that were going on here. There was the actual war on the battlefield, brief though it was, and there was also the what I would describe as the narrative war off the battlefield. So in terms of the actual war, I would argue that both sides can claim victory in the sense that India had said that it wanted to curb the terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan that had contributed to the attack in India. Of course, Pakistan has denied there was any Pakistani role, but India did carry out very robust, muscular strikes in Pakistan that targeted several sites that are known to have had terrorists in place. So, I think that's, one could argue, as a tactical victory for India right there. They also were able to do things that they have not done in Pakistan for a number of decades, and that includes sending missiles into Punjab, targeting a number of strategic sites, including military sites around the country. So I think that that's enough for India to claim victory. Pakistan can claim victory as well. India's government, of course, has refused to confirm that there were several Indian jets that were shot down, but they've also not denied it. And many international independent analysts are of the view that there were several Indian jets that were shot down. That is, I would argue, not only a tactical victory for Pakistan, but a psychological victory in the sense that, India's air force, its military, is perceived to be larger, more powerful than Pakistan's, and for Pakistan, even in a very brief conflict, to be able to shoot down several Indian jets. That is pretty significant as well. And more broadly, for Pakistan to have responded in the way that it did, sending missiles, drones into India, I think pushes back against the perception of quite a few people in India that Pakistan doesn't have the capacity to fight with the more powerful Indian military. So victories on both sides in terms of the battlefield. The narrative war, here it's interesting. I would argue that India had it won early on in the sense that much of the world had rallied to India's side after the attack in Kashmir, condemning the attack, expressing solidarity with India. But then what happened is the world started pushing for de-escalation, and then, of course, the US was involved in efforts to push for a ceasefire. And I think that India would have preferred that not happen. It wanted the world to continue to view this crisis seen through the frame of terrorism and counterterrorism, and India would have preferred that the world step back and essentially defer to India's counterterrorism imperatives, let it do what it needs to do to deal with that. So I think in that sense, as the crisis wrapped up, I think that Pakistan had the narrative war won. That as you know, we're going to be seeing very senior delegations from both India and Pakistan going around the world to try to plead their case, to try to win the narrative war conclusively.
So is it like a diplomatic duel between the two countries now?
It is, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at the list of people in both countries that have been appointed for this role as some of the most distinguished political figures and former ambassadors and diplomats from each country, very recognizable names, right? Bilawal Bhutto, Shashi Tharoor, folks like that. And it's interesting, right? Because India is very sensitive about not wanting the world to be involved in its bilateral disputes with Pakistan. But India, I believe it was India that first announced the step to take its argument on the road, so to speak, and convene this group of delegates to pretty much every corner of the world to make a pitch, which suggests that, for India and certainly for Pakistan, what the world thinks and how the world perceives this crisis is very important for both countries.
Right, Michael, frictions have erupted scores of times. Ceasefires, mostly mediated by foreign powers, have been announced several times in the past. But the core issues, again, the long-standing issues, they remain unresolved, and the cycle still continues. Will U.S., in your opinion, play a further role in pushing the two countries, the two sides on the dinner table, like President Trump mentioned in a lighter vein? Or the U.S. has done its part?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of attention has been brought to Trump's comments about wanting the two sides to go out to dinner and how he wants to seek a solution to the Kashmir issue. That doesn't reflect U.S. policy. It's just Trump, I think, being Trump. It's him essentially reflecting his interest and intrigue in this intractable Kashmir crisis, and him being someone that always wants to be at the center of these types of things. He views himself as a deal maker, as a peace broker. I think he was just speaking very spontaneously and saying that he would want to see a resolution. But I don't think that the U.S. will break from what has been its policy for a number of decades, and that is essentially to not get involved with the Kashmir issue, to defer to the Indian position that this is a bilateral issue.
An internal
The
matter.
U.S. An internal matter, exactly. The U.S. has always had an interest in India and Pakistan having a workable relationship. So I do think that we're going to see U.S. officials do what they can to ensure that the ceasefire holds, to make sure things don't fall apart. But I really don't think we're going to see this administration get involved on the Kashmir issue.
But how do you see the relation between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi as being discussed? What happened? What exactly happened between them? From Howdy Modi to Donald Trump now praising Pakistan, what does this shift in global support tell us?
I mean, President Trump, he's not someone that has a deep knowledge of the India-Pakistan relationship and the dynamics there. So, when he's out there pushing for the two sides to get along better and pushing for a Kashmir resolution, that's not meant as an insult to Modi or a criticism of India or its position or anything like that. I feel he's just as fond of Modi as he had been. Now, Modi, I think, would certainly be unhappy about this messaging coming from Trump. But I think that in India, whether you're talking about Modi or others, there's a view that this is just President Trump being President Trump. He's a maverick. He does things differently. And then it's something that could invariably be shrugged off. India is undergoing very sensitive, high stakes talks with the U.S. on a trade deal, which is very important for India to reduce the likelihood of tariffs. So I think for that reason as well, India is going to, even if it's concerned, it's going to have to shrug it all off and push things forward. Both the U.S. and India have a lot of strong shared strategic and commercial goals, which I think will ensure that they get over these tensions of recent days.
Right. As we speak, Deputy Prime Minister of Pakistan, Ishaq Dar, is in China with both foreign ministers of Afghanistan and Iran reaching Beijing also. How pivotal do you think is China going to be in diffusing Pak-India tensions?
Well, I mean, it's not a mediator. I wouldn't see it as a mediator just because it has a very fraught relationship with India. I mean, I'd thought all along that the significance of China in this whole story relates to its security relationship with Pakistan. I mean, it is providing significant arms to Pakistan. We know that Pakistan used Chinese-made jets in this crisis to shoot down at least one Indian jet, likely more. So, I think French-made Indian jet, I should say. So I think that China is significant in that context. But there's been some efforts to patch up relations between China and India in recent months. But at the end of the day, China is a close ally of Pakistan's. And I think that the idea of mediation on the part of the Chinese is not something that we could really expect. There are plenty of other countries, whether we're talking about the U.S. or whether we're talking about the Gulf states. I mean, you mentioned Iran, but I would emphasize more Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia. They've got much better relations with both Pakistan and India. I think we could expect them to be the ones that try to push the two sides to maintain the ceasefire, not necessarily to strengthen relations on the whole, but to ensure the ceasefire holds, because I think that's the big concern in the immediate term.
Right, and like you mentioned, do you believe that India is could be hurt following and could be hurt militarily following a clash with Pakistan and China and Chinese hegemony on technology, which established?
Well, yeah, I think it's very significant that you have Chinese-made jets shooting down a French-made jet. That's very significant. And I think what's also notable for India is that Pakistan was using Turkish drones. So it indicates that Pakistan has been making efforts to achieve some level of parity with India when it comes to diversifying sources of arms supplies. We know that India has been doing a good job for many years of diversifying its suppliers. Russia is the legacy supplier, but we've seen the US, Israel, and France in more recent years become key suppliers. But Pakistan is now depending heavily on China and increasingly Turkey, and that's especially important as well. In that, the US has reiterated its view that Pakistan cannot use US-made F-16s to target India, only to be used for counterterrorism. The US set aside nearly $400 million earlier this year for a program meant to monitor Pakistan's F-16s for that very purpose. So that makes these Chinese jets even more important, as well as the Turkish weaponry as well. And so I think that's sort of an indication of the direction Pakistan will be going.
Right, but Michael, what do you think? What is your assessment? Was India perhaps thinking that Pakistan would not retaliate to the aggression that triggered from their side?
I think that there might be a perception in India among some that Pakistan would not respond, but I suspect that those in charge in India, high levels, would certainly know enough about Pakistan and its capacities to have expected that Pakistan would retaliate, would respond. I don't think that that's something. Maybe on public levels, it would be sort of a populist view that, Pakistan is too weak, it can't respond to India's mighty military. But I'm quite sure that at the top, Indian authorities figured that a Pakistani response was coming.
Do you still feel the threats of escalation are still looming on our heads?
Well, not. I think the ceasefire. I think the ceasefire should hold. I mean, my understanding is that the DGMOs have been using the hotline. They used it during the crisis. They used it right after the ceasefire. They're talking to ensure the ceasefire holds. So I think that's good. But no, it's a very fragile situation. So I think beyond the next few weeks and months, we would have to worry. And the Indian government's message has been that this wasn't necessarily a ceasefire. It was more of a temporary pause. And Modi essentially indicated in his speech that this crisis is not over. So I do think that we have to worry about the resumption of some escalation in the weeks or months ahead.
Thank you so much, Michael Kugelman, for joining us on the show. Michael Kugelman, South Asia expert, was on the show with us. और इसी के साथ ही हम बढ़ेंगे एक ब्रेक की तरफ.